Well, welcome everyone. This is the third term, the last installment of the first year MA photography seminar. Sorry, a few more people are coming in. It's really, really good to see everyone. Honestly, I really missed this. And I was really, really disappointed last week that I couldn't come, and it was the first time that I knew that I will not be able to say anything. I was really very ill with some kind of flu. But the good thing is that I managed to finish the unit guide in the meantime. And as you could see, if you look at the unit guide, this term is a little bit fragmented because from next week, we have to leave this room for about 4 weeks. So 2 of these weeks we're going to be in different places and also in different times. I think both of them are in the afternoon because that was the only time I could find a room for us. So look at the guide to see what room we're in, or call me if you're not sure. And 2 of these 2 next weeks there are no sessions because there is a degree show. So I hope you will. We're going to buddy you up with second year students, so you will help them with the install. But 2 sessions will be missing, and then in June, I think it's the 17th. It's like the 11th or the 12th of June. I said in the unit guide we're going to have a session on Tuesday, but you already do something with David on Tuesday, so either we will have it in the afternoon after we finish with David, or we will have to cancel this session, and I will then see if we can have another one later on towards the end of the term. And that's because I was asked to give a talk in Foto España in Madrid, so I have to be there on Wednesday. Okay, so what happened in the meantime? Last time we really been together for real, it was during the interim show, wasn't it? Yeah. That was a very long break, too long, I think. So, I think that most of us are here now. Now, for my students from the MA photography, this is the term in which the research paper becomes kind of important to start thinking about what you're going to write your paper about. So in a sense, things we do over this term, I hope you are already kind of saying, oh, okay, that's a very interesting sentence that we just read, I might use it. And you add, so you use these seminars to advance your thinking about the research paper. It might be that it appears to you that what the research paper is about and what we are doing today has no connection. Trust me, there is a connection. Yeah, if you find it, if you articulate it, you advance your paper. It could be that what we say now, someone feels really dislocated from what you want to talk about, and that's also good. You can use that as well. Yeah. So use these sessions as a kind of opportunity to accumulate various interesting quotations, expressions, thoughts into your research file. That is the quickest way to amass some material from which you can later work. And we will have more sessions about the research paper as we go through the term. I didn't schedule any so far because I somehow need to feel that we get the degree show rolling, and then we will find the time to do that as well. Okay. Let's go around and please say in one sentence what is your name, and also what are you working on. You could also tell us what is your research paper about, or you could tell us what is your what you are interested in your practice at this moment in time. Hiding this place. Come through.
Sorry.
That's okay. Go on. Okay. You came to the right place. Are you ready? Yeah. Okay. So tell us your name.
Okay.
And tell us what are you working on.
My name is Ding. I'm working on my final show. It's a very interesting art show.
A very interesting art show.
Yeah. It's a kind of critique the museum and also talk about the originality of the work, and also about the Chinese reproduction of paintings.
Really? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Julia, and I'm working on the difference between analog and digital identity.
Nice.
I'm Irene, and I am working in emotions and schizophrenia.
Good.
My name is Ben. I'm working on the two-dimensionality of three-dimensional objects and vice versa.
My name is Lisa. I'm working on suffering.
Suffering. Okay.
My name is Simona. I'm swinging between the role of the executionist in the Tyranny of Love, or the doctor exposing the wounds of the society.
Can you repeat?
Yeah, I'm swinging between two roles. One is being the executionist in the Tyranny of Love, and the other one being the doctor exposing the wounds of the sick society.
And do you know the book by Irvin Yalom, Love's Executioner? Do you know Irvin Yalom? He is fantastic, guys. He is so great. But I will open Amazon to show you also how his name is spelled. Yeah, this is the book Love's Executioner. But Irvin D. Yalom, he is a psychotherapist or a psychoanalyst and a writer. So, and he's incredibly well known. He's about 90 now, but he's incredibly well known as a writer of literature that is psychoanalytically and philosophically informed. So he has a book on Nietzsche, he has a book on Schopenhauer. His books are generally around questions that arise through looking at life psychotherapeutically and philosophically. But his psychotherapy is philosophically informed. So he is his probably the most famous book is Existential Psychotherapy. It's really, really fantastic stuff. Also, this The Gift of Therapy is fantastic. He is really amazing. If you don't know any of his books, I think you will really be happy. What?
No,
Which one?
no, the
Spinoza's problem.
Love execution or
Yeah.
the other type of...
Yeah. That's the one. Yeah, that's the one I thought that Simona might want to have a look at. Yeah. So you should check it out. Okay. Sorry. That was just an interruption. Okay. Who is next? Julia.
Yeah, I'm Julia for Fine University, and I just finished this space exhibition, and I don't know where to go now.
And what is your research paper about?
Yeah, I have to put something together, but
Aren't we all?
I have to start it as well.
No idea. Okay.
I'm Mary, also fine arts first year. We are having our first practice event on Tuesday, and we're installing on Friday.
Uh-huh.
So that takes up a lot of space.
And what you're going to do?
I have ordered, I made a file for a PVC binder, 2x1 meters, and I think the file is too small, but I'm getting it tomorrow, so I'm pretty excited what it looks like. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Alex. I'm looking at how our digital audience creates fragmented realities and identities of ourselves.
How, what creates?
Our digital audience.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm Juan, and I'm working on non-verbal communication networks and acceleration.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm working on obsession and fragility.
I didn't hear.
I'm working on obsession and fragility.
Obsession, fragility.
Yeah, fragility.
Very nice.
I'm Wes, second year fine art. I'm currently in the process of installing work in the Petrie Museum in UCL.
What work?
It was also in the big space last week. It had a big sort of like blue flume, which I call it, the rope going up all the way to the ceiling and the rock kind of anchoring it.
Great. And what? You're not at the research paper stage at the moment. You're doing this year.
Well, I need to start planning it, but I don't have to write it for a while.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm Prashant. Sort of researching about the Internet of Things.
Internet of Things. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's basically that.
Hey, I'm Max. I'm working on the translation between different formats.
Between?
Different formats.
Conversion between different formats.
Yeah.
Nice.
Translation.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Esther, and I'm thinking about my research paper, and I think I want to do something related to being. What is being? Like just the nature of a person, its essence, and its relationship to art making.
Okay.
I'm Valentina, and I'm working on traces.
Nice. Okay.
I'm Matilde, and I'm working on how to express silence in photographs.
Okay.
Silence.
And how do you express sound in photographs?
I don't know. I just want to explore how to express silence in straight images.
Okay.
I'm Vinicius. I'm working on the transfiguration of the hidden process of the images.
Nice.
Rudiments, I'm combining painting, drawing and printing, looking at impermanence.
Impermanence. Yes. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Catherine, and I have a lot of thoughts, but right now I'm working with will and strength and collapsing.
And what was last one?
Collapsing.
Collapsing.
Or not collapsing.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ben, year 1 in photography, and I'm working on the relationship between physical and virtual isolation.
Yes. Good.
Hi, I'm Timo, and I'm photography, also year 1.
and I'm preparing my research paper on collective memory of virtual spaces.
Nice.
I'm Grazia, I'm a photography and I'm working on the limit between pain and pleasure.
Your book? Good.
I am Marta, and I'm researching invisibility, and at the moment I'm reading about the dark net.
The dark net? What are you reading about it?
Since it's a topic that I'm not much familiar with, it's a sort of introduction about what it is and how it's.
Okay, I can give you some links to artists who use the dark net.
I'm Alexandra. I'm first year photography. I'm working on losing weight.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Siobhan. I'm first year photography. I'm researching about the veil.
Veil. Mm-hmm. Okay. Great. And Carol.
Carol, and I'm working on boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Boundaries? What kind of boundaries?
My own.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. You see how good you get at doing this. Excellent. Okay. Well, as you see from the unit guide, we're going to talk today. Well, today's session, I see it as a base camp. We're going to summarize some of the themes we discussed last term when we looked at the digital condition. And we will establish a kind of position today from which we can carry on exploring various issues to do with, I call it broadly, the post-representational moment. But today's question for us is, what is simulacra? Now, I think this is a relevant topic from what I heard going around the table, the things you're working with, whether you're interested in the virtual, in the digital, in questions of limits, in questions of boundaries, in questions of desire. The notion of simulacra will be very relevant. And anyway, it is such a commonly used term in popular discourse that it is quite good to have a sophisticated understanding of what are we talking about when we talk about simulacra. What is this simulacrum thing? So that's what we're going to explore. So first, I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to summarize how far, or where did we get to in our discussions last term. Well, very broadly speaking, we were trying to figure out what this digital condition is all about. What does it mean to be digital? How different it is, this digital existence, from the analog one? So, if you remember, one of the first moments where we saw that operating was historically located long before any kind of digital technical devices were invented. We simply looked at two paintings from the 17th century, one by Velázquez, Las Meninas, and the other by Vermeer. Yeah, this view of the town of, what was the name of the town? Delft, yeah. And then we could already see how these two images belong to two orders of inscription. Yeah, one order in the Vermeer order of inscription that privileges realism and linear representation, and another, the Velázquez image, that seems to be more concerned with the question of how representation itself operates. Yeah? And somehow, in this split that occurs around the moment where that we generally say, well, this is the moment where modernity begins, modernity as capitalism, modernity as technology, modernity as democracy, modernity as autonomy of the human subject, the individual, you know. So at this moment, when something happens to create the world order that we come to call later the modern era, at this moment, a kind of very interesting split or a problem happens in the visual field as well. Not surprisingly, if there is a revolution happening in science, economics, politics, trade, then obviously art is somehow part of the same environment, connected with its own, with the very tissues to the other parts of life. Art is also dealing with this crisis. Yeah? So we were trying to identify some traits of this crisis. And it seems that the question that became important in this moment of modernity is in what way things are being represented, in what way things are being put forward. So if previously the question was how to represent something accurately, and that was the question for artists from, let's say, Giotto in the 14th century to all the way through the Renaissance, yeah, when artists progressively learned to paint more realistically, with more detail, in a more almost photographic way. Yeah? So the question was how to make your painting more real and more photographic. And then at this moment of the 17th century, there is a kind of shift of focus, and the question is not how to make a picture which is realer than real, which is more believable, more true to life, but how to examine the very mechanism that does that. Yeah? So in the 17th century, this moment of the emergence of modernity, the question becomes, what is this mechanism that makes things appear the way they are? Yeah? Okay, now, jumping quickly forward to, we then looked at this book by Deleuze and Guattari, 1,000 Plateaus, and we looked at it for over 3 weeks, and, you know, I have to say, whenever I tell people that that's what we read in these seminars, you know, there is a kind of murmur of disbelief. But they say, oh, surely no one can understand anything. But you know, lo and behold, there's plenty there that we can not only understand, but also work with, and even sometimes even laugh at. Yeah? That's how much purchase we can have as a group on these texts. And sometimes we even find them amusing. You know, sometimes we even get the jokes. Now, what we looked at in 1,000 Plateaus were 3 strategies of being digital, 3 strategies of becoming digital. Now, with Velázquez and Vermeer, we noticed a certain crack running through this smooth veneer of representation. The crack initiated in Velázquez when he paints himself painting the picture. When the subject of the painting is not the king, but the artist who is making the painting, a kind of something starts to wobble, a kind of crack appears in this notion of how reality should be dealt with representationally. And perhaps it's a bit of a stretch, but it seems to me that it's the same crack, or we are still living some of the consequences of this crack. But today we might talk about the divide between the digital and the analog. Perhaps it's not a crack at all. Perhaps we need to have another name, because maybe if Dario was sitting here, he would immediately tell me, well, you are already too binary. You already talk about two opposites as if there is nothing else. Yeah, so thank you, Dario. So that's a very valid and important observation. And because really it is not a binary. And it's not even two sides of a coin. At the same time, it does seem that the concern with the mechanics of how something comes into view, with the mechanics of what makes something visible, is still with us. It's still an important one. So when we looked at Thousand Plateaus, you know, we spoke about three strategies by which you become digital, or three strategies by which a contemporary artwork operates. And do you remember how we codenamed them? We gave them kind of pet names. Oh, yes. Rhizome, yes. Rhizome or rhizome.
In French, la ritournelle.
The refrain.
The refrain and rhythm.
The rhythm is good, and it's a close relative of the refrain. And then
The beginning.
The becoming. Very good. Yes. Yes. This is your Swiss Army knife of postmodern life. Yeah. So whenever you go on a little wander in the postmodern jungle, don't forget to take this Swiss Army knife with you. Yeah. It has three tools. So far, maybe some more. Three tools: the rhizome, or the rhizome, becoming, and the refrain, or repetition, or self-replication. Can come under different names, and it's not so much about the names, and also these three tools, they're still part of the same Swiss Army knife. They really, they are one tool, but not exactly. Yeah, they are not three separate entities. They are somehow connected. So very quickly, what is the rhizome? Anyone?
Something that is not
Multiplicity. Yes? Good.
something that is not rooted.
Something that is not rooted, or at least not rooted to just one place. Yeah, it can have roots in many places. Yeah. Example of a rhizome? Good.
Mice.
Huh?
Mice.
Mice, excellent. Another one? Ginger.
Networks. Like the
Networks.
Fractal.
Fractals. Yes. Now we're talking. And Japanese knotweed. Very important. Okay, so we know what is the rhizome. Now, Lucrezia, that was very good that you put in mice. Care to explain to us what is rhizomatic about mice?
It's never one mouse. They're like a family.
They're not even a family. Yeah, it's a swarm. Yeah. You know, so if you see a swarm of birds, for instance, or hi Maria, or some animals only exist as a pack. Yeah, there is a pack of wolves. What does it mean, a pack of wolves? Do you know how wolves hunt? Yeah, when wolves, for instance, hunt, wolves can hunt an animal which is much bigger than them, like a bear, for instance, or a horse, or a bison, And how they do that? They run after this bear as a pack, and they run and run and run until this much bigger animal falls down exhausted. Yeah? The only way they can hunt like this is because they hunt as a pack. Yeah? So this is the rhizome. Now, you could also say that human society is kind of inherently rhizomatic. Yeah? Let's just stop for a second. Maria, hello. Can you just tell us very quickly what are you working on and what is your name?
Maria, and I'm working on the role of art in the age of extinction.
In the age of extinction?
Yeah.
And excellent.
What artwork for?
Right,
which is for what is useful art in this era.
That's very good. And do you know the book by Claire Colbrook?
Yes, I'm reading that.
Nice, good. So, brilliant. Okay, so this is the rhizome. Very good. The second one, or the next one, is the notion of becoming. And what is becoming? What does it mean? What do you hear in the notion of becoming?
No beginning, no change.
No beginning, no end?
Process. Flow, continuous.
Flow, continuous process. Yes?
Transformation.
Transformation. Excellent. Now, the way to think about becoming and to think about it in relation to your work is that becoming offers you an alternative to think about things as full stops. Yeah? Instead of saying, here is an object, here is another object, this is an object, which really emphasizes their kind of isness, their factuality, their being. Becoming offers a slightly different perspective in which you pay attention more to how things come to be what they are and where are they going. Yeah, where are they developing? So, well, you are becoming a master or you are becoming an artist. Yeah. So, but do you stop becoming an artist? Well, once you graduate with a MA in photography or fine art from Central St. Martin's, is your becoming over? Thank God, no more of this becoming. Well, the whole idea of becoming is that there is no end point. There is only becoming. In terms of an artist, you can never really be an artist. You can only become an artist. That would be a nice, if someone asks you, well, are you an artist? You can say, well, I'm becoming an artist, And but you see, why is it? What is the advantage of thinking in that way? Well, the advantage is that talking about becoming allows you to pay more attention to the processes that make something, yeah, and also allows you to look at every singular state as a point on a continuum. Yeah? So for instance, Zsuzsa, for instance, we spoke about your work last week, yeah? And you showed me something today. One way would be to say, well, here it is, it's done, the work is finished, my job is done here. But looking at it from the perspective of becoming, you would say, well, this work is never finished, because next time you install it, it will become something else. It will be in a different environment, in a different wall, for a different audience, in a different space. Your materials will be different, you will be different. The work is never fixed to any specific meaning, location, authorial attribution. It is all the time evolving. I mean, this is kind of, when you think about it, it's pretty straightforward. Everything is continuously evolving in a state of flux. Did we mention extra points for that. Did we mention the Greek moment, the moment in Greek philosophy where this notion of becoming makes an appearance? You get 2 points for it. Pantarei, yes. And who said that? Heraclitus.
Yeah.
Great. Yes. So Heraclitus said Pantarei. Pantarei means everything flows. Everything flows. That's becoming. If you remember, D&G, they talk about becoming animal. And what does it mean, becoming animal? What does it mean for us to be becoming animal? Well, the question is not so much even what it means, but what it allows us to do. How can we think about being human from the perspective of becoming? From the perspective of being, well, I'm saying, I am human, you are a table, you are a computer, and we sadly don't have any living entities here apart from us. Last year, one of the students wanted to have a plant there by the window, but I thought it would look too much like a prison cell. So anyway, hope is a dangerous thing. So, so from the perspective of being, you are saying, this is me, and this is a computer, and this is a table, and this is another person, and everyone in their specific category. I am a rational animal. This is a rational computer, stove, piece of metal. This is a rational piece of metal. This is an irrational piece of metal, piece of wood. But from the perspective of becoming, I am in the process of becoming a machine, or a piece of wood, or a tree, or an animal. And are these far-fetched notions? Well, they're not really that far-fetched now, because you can kind of see how there is no clear-cut boundary between being a human being and a computer, or a human being and a table. Yeah? Well, is it clear why, or shall we go into it? Why there is no clear boundary?
Because it could be everything and anything.
Why?
Because you're going, we don't know where you're going.
There is that, but also the thinking about existence from the perspective of becoming allows you to challenge the fixed categories that put everything in these Aristotelian boxes. It allows you to challenge the nomenclature. Do you know the word nomenclature? Yeah? It's when you, let's say if I ask you to do a nomenclature of this room, you will take a ledger, or you will take an Excel sheet. You will take an Excel sheet, and then you will say, okay, item number 1, tables. Someone will go and count the tables and say, tables 7. Item number 2, chairs. Item number 3, doors. Item number 4, ladders. And then you have a list of all the items in the space, how many of them, yeah? And this is your nomenclature. Everything has its own cell, so to speak, yeah? Now this is not how the becoming approach invites us, encourages us to think, yeah? We are more concerned here with precisely the problems inherent in this way of dividing everything. Yeah? Because how do you decide? Why do you keep the chairs and the tables in two different categories? Yeah? Isn't a table also a kind of chair? If chairs are for sitting, you could also sit on a table. If tables are for writing and eating, then you could also use a chair for that. Yeah? So is a chair becoming table? Yeah? Well, that's one way to look at it. Yeah? If you want to somehow think more, let's say, creatively of what you can do with the table, you might ask, well, what is it becoming? And if you ever worked in theater, anyone here has any experience in theater? Yeah? Well, in theater, you know, when you build a stage, it's a lot about, say, yeah, it's a table, but in this play, it will be a machine gun. Yeah? Or it will be a shelter. Or it will be a cow. You know? It's kind of entirely, it can do all these things if you want. If you want it to, yeah? But in order to be able to think like that, you need to allow this notion of becoming. Okay, so just before we move on from this point, something that would be relevant to people who deal with the post-human, or Maria, what you said earlier about the Anthropocene. Why are we so certain that we know what it means to be a human being? And what are the consequences of being so certain? Yeah? So, what if we allow the human to become an animal? What if we allow an element of the machine into the idea of the human? Then the human is also becoming a machine, and a machine like this is also in the process of becoming human. The artificial intelligence and Turing test, these kind of things, all seem to push the machine towards becoming a human being. But that goes the other way as well. You know, we are becoming, or you could make this argument if you wanted, we are continuously in the process of becoming, on one hand, more animalistic, on the other hand, more machinistic. And what does it mean then to be a human being? There is no fixed notion of humanity as such, but only what is it becoming. Yeah? Maybe it is, as Maria was saying earlier, becoming extinct. Maybe that's really what makes us human. We are human because we extinct ourselves, the world, you know, whatever. Maybe extinction is really the essentially human quality. Okay, so the third aspect of this Swiss Army knife is repetition, or the refrain, or rhythm. Yeah, all the things that recur. And what can we do with that? How is that good? What can we do with repetition?
Create a space.
Right, interesting. How?
Because with the sound, we create our own space, and everyone is creating the space with this sound, with the rid of food, with the liner and everything.
Good. You know, have you ever been on Albert Bridge? It's near Battersea, crosses the river near Battersea. It's a really beautiful bridge. It just looks like it's from Cinderella or something. Very delicate. And it has a sign that says, "Troops must break step while walking on this bridge." Why? Because if you imagine a platoon, you know, 50 soldiers in their boots, all marching on the bridge, left, right, left, right, left, right, what will happen? The bridge will collapse. And this is not a joke. Why will it collapse? Because of the rhythm. Yeah?
That's the rhythm with time as well.
Sorry?
Time.
Time? Yeah. Well, rhythm is always about time. Yeah? Rhythm is a measure. How do we call it in music? Measure. That's 4 measures. Yeah? So you're right. So troops that march in the rhythm can wreck a bridge. But as Max was saying earlier, the moment you bring in a rhythm into your work, you delineate a territory. You create a space. And it's really important, it's interesting if you think about that. You create a space, and what else? In rhythm, something repeats itself. So this sound comes back again and again and again, and it's the same sound, and it's this repetition creates something extra, yeah? Because how rhythms work. Well, if you ever been to a rave or to a club with house music, yeah, then you know that the rhythm is something very, very sensual and very physical, yeah? It just swallows you in, you know, it just somehow takes you in. And it's not cognitive, it's not intellectual, you just absorb into it, yeah? So rhythm has also very powerful and interesting notions of holding people together. If we are all drumming, if we all have our drums and we all drum in the same rhythm, you know, we really feel this massive sense of togetherness. Yeah? So clearly, big political rallies always use rhythm, as you remember from looking at Leni Riefenstahl, but also if you look at, if you are following the American presidential nominations at the moment, not the presidential, but the candidate nominations, and you look at the rallies, then this notion of building in a rhythm is incredibly important for this sense of cohesion and togetherness. You know, whenever you see there is a particular form of politics for which rhythm and is hugely important to hold people together. Yeah, but it's the rhythm that creates a territory. Why? Why rhythm creates a territory? Because there is a sense that things start to belong together. Things that sort of are spread randomly around this table. So the moment the table is kind of just basically chaos. But if we start noticing elements as, for instance, the cups of coffee or the computers, takes a little bit of reorganization, and suddenly there are various rhythms. And the moment we identify a rhythm coming out of all this chaos, something starts to hold things together. Yeah? So you might have a canvas or a piece of paper, and you make few marks on it, and there might be few accidental marks that just don't connect, and you throw this piece of paper away, and you start again. And once upon a time, on a good day, you make a few marks, and suddenly there is a rhythm, suddenly there is a kind of connection. And then the next mark already, in a sense, writes itself in, tells you where it needs to go. So here are the three tools of this digital or postmodern thinking: the rhizome, becoming, and rhythm. I now have weekly meetings with the second year students because we're preparing the degree show. And it's interesting how, in thinking, how everything we have the D space, you probably know, the large space on the ground floor. How the real question in terms of curating this space that we are all thinking about is precisely this question of rhythm. How do you build a rhythm into the show so that 24 people, 24 different artists, everyone works in their own way? Obviously, we don't tell people to somehow, you know, connect their work. You know, everyone does whatever their curiosity, whatever their work takes, wherever their work takes them. But then it's our role as curators to identify the rhythms in these works and somehow play with them. Maybe break them up. Maybe let them develop. Yeah? Rhythms can happen on the level of materials, concerns, ideas, height, smell or touch. You know, it doesn't have to be aural. Yeah, the rhythm doesn't have to be something you hear. It can be a visual rhythm. It can also be a rhythm of thoughts or feelings or ideas. Yeah. But only if the rhythm is somehow established, or only if rhythms are established, then the whole thing becomes a real show rather than 24 people in the space. Yeah? And you know from the installs we've done here that when you get a kind of rhythm working, then magically everything really comes together. Okay, so here really that's the summary of the last semester. Any questions so far?
So is rhythm essential to growth? Are they one and the same?
Is rhythm essential to growth? No. No. Or maybe yes. Either no or yes. or maybe. Yeah, I think the answer is maybe. I think it really depends what you mean by growth. It's not essential for growth, but you can grow through rhythm. So we'll put it this way. Yeah? Because I think the only thing that is essential for growth is the will to grow. Or well, as Nietzsche would say, the will to power. But you can grow through rhythms. If I understand you, do you want to explain in what way you mean that?
Well, rhythm, sound rhythm is moving, is a movement forward, or what we're talking about, to show coming together.
But in what way is it a movement? It is a movement, but is it a movement forward?
It's a becoming. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's going to say.
It's not so much a movement forward
Yeah.
as it is really, when Marx said it's creating a territory, it's holding things together. Yeah? That I think is the key. I think that growth takes us into, well, becoming, I would say, is essential for growth. Yeah? Growing is becoming. Does that make sense? Yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
The boundaries, you're saying, like you were saying 5 minutes ago, something about the boundaries between computer and humans.
Yeah.
And then you stopped.
Yes. Well, I was just saying we shouldn't. I was just saying that thinking through becoming allows us to question these pre-given boundaries between entities, between animate and inanimate creatures, between humans, animals, and machines. You know, we are usually taught that there are very clear boundaries. If you are a human, you are not a rock, you are not a car. If you are a dog, then you are not a person. But if you look at it from the perspective of becoming, then perhaps, well, the boundaries are not really boundaries, but it just stages in becoming.
So it's one big mess.
Yes, it's one big mess, exactly.
Mess or mass?
Mess and mass. It's one. Yeah. It's one big mess and mass, but not complete chaos. Why is it not complete chaos? Because what stops? Good. What stops this one big mess from just being chaos?
Rhythm?
Good. Yeah, this is on the table now, one big mess. This is cosmos, if you like, yeah? Various bits, some stars there, a bit of the Milky Way, stuff. But because there are some rhythms, because some things accidentally, for whatever reason, just happen to connect, yeah? Ta, 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 ta. Then suddenly there is a kind of sense emerging from this chaos. This sense is emerging not because we divided the chaos into categories, okay, all the black holes to the left, or the stars to the right, It's not this kind of nomenclature. It's another approach. It's an approach that instead of sticking things into their boxes to identify rhythms. Marianne? Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good, good. Very good questions, and you get it. You know, you really get it. It's great. Okay, how are we doing for time? Do you want a quick break before we get into the, or is it too early? Later? Okay. Right. So I thought we'd talk today about what is simulacra, because everyone is familiar with this term, and I don't think people really get what is it about. I gave you two texts to look at. One is this Plato and the Simulacrum, which is a short essay by Deleuze that Rosalind Krauss translated, and the other is this. Sorry, the other is the other is an essay by Brian Massumi. Do you remember who is Brian Massumi? He is the translator of Thousand Plateaus. He wrote the introduction. You remember State Philosophy? Okay, so here are the two texts. Masumi's text is very, very useful, and as you're going to mention, I mean, if you're going to work with the question of simulacra or simulacrum in your work, I suggest you read this essay. Both of them are now on Dropbox, in their different parts. But we're going to look mostly at this essay by Deleuze. Before we move on, what is the difference between simulacra and simulacrum?
It's singular.
Yes, simulacra is plural, simulacrum is singular. So no simulacrums. Yeah, don't use that. never append English plural to a Greek or Latin word. Yeah, so for instance, stadium, plural of stadium, stadia. Yeah, not stadiums. Okay. It's no big deal, but just so you know. So now, most people who kind of studied about the simulacrum in school or in college generally came across Baudrillard's book Simulacra and Simulation, and that's exactly the one we're not going to do, because there are essentially two approaches to simulacra. One that is coming from the pen of Baudrillard, and the other which is the more Deleuzean understanding. Now, according to Baudrillard, and I'm only saying that so you know, Baudrillard was a French, some people say philosopher. I don't think he's a philosopher. I think he's a media studies guy. He also used to be a photographer for his scenes. But for him, for Baudrillard, simulacra is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. Yeah? So, according to Baudrillard, once upon a time, there was a real world, and we walked the earth, and we ate the bread, and we fought the wars, and we, gave birth, and everything was kind of real. And then we started to make pictures of things, and because we started to experience the world as pictures, we entered this first order of simulacra, as he calls, in which we are surrounding ourselves by images of the real, rather than by the real things. Yeah. So, but as time goes by, and our images get more and more sophisticated and more realistic, more three-dimensional, and they're everywhere, we forget that the picture is a copy of something that is real, and we start thinking that the picture is the real. Yeah? We start mistaking the copy for the original. So we live in a world in which we all the time make copies. So in the first stage, we make copies of the real things. In the second stage, we make copies of the copies. And then when we want to go from the copy to the real thing, we only get from the copy to the previous copy. Yeah? So we are in this world of clones or copies, in which we forget that behind all these copies there is something real and tangible. And so we live, I think he calls it the fourth order of simulacra, and that is the moment at which we forget that the image is a copy of something real, and the image acquires for us qualities of reality. Yeah. Now that's Baudrillard.
I'm sorry, what was
The third.
Yes, you said that the one is
Copy of the real.
Yes.
Copy of a copy of a real. Copy of a copy of a copy of the real. And finally yeah. It just exactly, you get it. Now, for that reason, Baudrillard, when the first Iraq war happened, when Bush Senior, we used to have in the States, we used to have a president, Bush Senior, started the first war against Saddam Hussein. That was 1991, I think. Baudrillard famously said, the Iraq war never happened. Why did he say that? Because that was the first time when on your television you could see quite an incredible footage shot from a camera installed on the tip of a rocket. And you would just see the movement of the rocket and the camera as they fly towards the target and the explosion. Yeah? It was a war televised from the perspective of the bullet, if you like. Yeah, from the perspective of the missile. And he said this war was fought entirely on computer screens. He basically said there was no war. All there was is a computer game that happened to be called, the Gulf War. But it was pure simulacra. There was no real war as such. All there was is a televised representation, a televised image. So he became very famous for that. So whenever you hear people say, that the war only happens on the TV screen, that's where it is coming from. So it's at the time, it was a very interesting, provocative statement. I want to tell you this story because this is not the position to do with simulacra that I want to explore with you here. I want to explore with you something different because, in my opinion, the other approach, which is the Deleuzean approach to simulacra, is more productive to understand how contemporary artwork operates. Yeah? But both approaches are interesting, and Brian Masumi, in his essay, deals in the beginning deals with precisely that. Let's see very quickly what he says here. Okay. Let's read that a little bit. Actually, I think it's very nice to have a look. So this is Realer Than Real, Simulacrum according to D&G, from 1987, by Brian Masumi. Could someone read to us the first paragraph? Is it big enough?
Yeah.
Would you like to read?
Yeah. There is a synoptic image of contemporary culture circulating today. Our world, Jean, his last name, tells us.
No, please, say his name.
Say Jean Baudrillard. Tells us, has been launched into hyperspace in a kind of postmodern apocalypse. The airless atmosphere has asphyxiated the referent, leaving us satellites in aimless orbit around an empty center. We breathe an ether of floating images that no longer bear relation to any reality whatsoever. That, according to Baudrillard, is simulation. The substitution of signs of the real for the real.
Okay, stop for a second. So this is Baudrillard's definition, yeah? Now, by the way, do you see how I always work with PDFs highlighting key sentences? You should work in this way. So you must have a PDF reader that allows you to do that, and obviously save it, yeah? Because that's, when you start writing your paper, you will not remember anything what you read here, and that's fine. But if you have the things highlighted, you can work with it.
What is the difference between simulation and simulacrum?
I think simulacrum is the, perhaps simulation is the process of making simulacrum.
Okay.
Yeah? Yeah, but I think here it is really interchangeable. When he says this according to Baudrillard is simulation, he could also say this is according to Baudrillard is simulacrum. Yeah, so perhaps it's not that.
Not the same.
It's not the same?
To me, it's actually the same.
The same.
Simulation and simulation.
I think here it is interchangeable, but maybe later on there will be echoes to nuance that. Okay, Vishal, carry on, please.
In hyperreality, signs no longer represent or refer to an external model. They stand for nothing but themselves and refer only to other signs. Distinctions.
No, they are to some extent.
Oh yeah, other signs. They are to some extent distinguishable in the way the phonemes of language are by a combinatory of minute binary distinctions. But postmodernism stutters. In the absence of any gravitational pull to ground them, images accelerate and tend to run together. They become interchangeable. Any term can be substituted for any other, utter indetermination. Faced with this homogeneous surface of syntagmatic slippage, we are left speechless. We can only gape in fascination. For the secret of the process is beyond our grasp. Meaning has imploded. There is no longer any external model, but there is an immanent one. To the syntagmatic surface of slippage, there corresponds an invisible paradigmatic dimension that creates those minimally differentiated signs only in order for them to blur together in a pleasureless orgy of exchange and circulation. Hidden in the images is a kind of genetic code responsible for their generation. Meaning is out of reach and out of sight, but not because it has receded into the distance. It is because the code has been miniaturized. Objects are images, images are signs, signs are information, and information fits on a chip. Everything reduces to molecular binarism, the generalized digitality of the computer as society. Continue?
Please. Just up to here, up to the sponge.
And so we cannot be said to be passive exactly because all polarity, including the active-passive dichotomy, has disappeared. We have no earth to center us, but we ourselves function as a ground in the electrical sense. We do not act, but neither do we merely receive. We absorb through our open eyes and hearts. We neutralize the play of energized images in the mass entropy of the silent majority. It makes for a fun read, but do we really have no other choice than being a naive realist or being a sponge?
Great. Okay. Now, there's quite a few images here. It's a very rich language. It uses, it's imagistic. What do you get so far from the story of Simulacra according to Baudrillard? Obviously, before I'm opening up the question for you, this is the straw man argument. And by the way, that might be an important lesson for those of you who are writing the paper. So how this essay is structured. So the essay is Simulacrum according to Deleuze and Guattari. Yeah? You would expect that the first sentence would be, according to Deleuze and Guattari, Simulacrum is A, B, C, and D. However, that's not how it starts. It starts from what Jean Baudrillard tells us. Now, why isn't it called Simulacrum according to Jean Baudrillard? Do you know the answer?
Maybe he's referring to the fact that Deleuze and Guattari were both influenced by Baudrillard.
No.
He's setting it up against what Baudrillard.
Yes.
He's what?
Baudrillard.
He's setting it up
yeah.
against what he's saying.
In the
He
next,
presents
yeah, that's right, Richard. Because we finished here. The next sentence that we didn't read yet, is Deleuze and Guattari open a third way. Yeah. So Deleuze and Guattari offer another approach. So this is a very useful strategy for your writing, for your paper. Let's say you want to write about anyone.
Pleasure.
Pleasure. Okay. Okay. What are we going with this?
You were going to give an example.
Well, no. According to look at this. Do we have no other choice than being a naive realist or being a sponge? So naive, yeah, and they offer a third way. Sponge is Baudrillard. Naive realist is someone who says, well, the world is the world and there's nothing to talk about it. This is real, go home. So you either have the naive realist that says, I don't need all these philosophies. I know where I stand. I know that the sun is rising in the east and goes down in the west. I don't need Copernicus to tell me that it's somehow the other way around. Yeah. You know what I mean. Anyway, it's a very useful strategy. You begin not from the thing you want to discuss, not from the thing you want to prove, but from the thing you argue against. And you describe the thing you want to argue against, and then the magic word, however, appears. However, another way of looking at things is possible. So, if, let's say, you want to write your paper about quantum physics, you could start from saying, according to Newton, matter is ruled by 3 key physical laws. And you list them and you explain them. You say, however, in the 20th century, a new way of understanding emerged that problematizes the Newtonian approach. Yeah? Why is that good? Because you already took a reader on a journey. The reader is already invested in the story. There is a kind of tension, So this new approach, this new kid on the block, will he make it? What will happen? The story starts to unravel, and your reader has to follow through to see what later happens. Yeah? So use that. And do you know how it's called when you start from the argument you argue against and set it up, as Vishal said? It's called the straw man argument. You know what is a straw man? You know how in the field you will have a scarecrow, this sort of thing made of straw with a hat that's supposed to scare the birds. Yeah? So that's the straw man. You set up this straw man, this man made of straw, and attach all these nasty things to it, and then you have something to argue against. Okay. But, so what Baudrillard is actually saying? Massumi explains Baudrillard to us. This is, according to Baudrillard, is simulacra. Here, the substitution of signs of the real for the real. Yeah? What does it mean? It means that it's basically a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. Now, objects are images, images are signs, signs are information, and information fits on a chip. In this world of Baudrillardian simulacra, Massumi is saying we become a kind of sponge that just absorbs entertainment. The Iraq war is just another bit of TV entertainment we absorb. You know? So what is it now? 9 o'clock is the EastEnders. 10 o'clock is the war in Iraq. 11 is the X Factor. You know? And we just absorb all these various forms of entertainment. Some of them make us laugh, some of them make us cry, others make us envy, and others make us feel very happy that it's not us. But it is all basically the same. We sit there, the couch potato that we are, just absorbing. Now, what kind of politics can there be for this couch potato sponge? Well, clearly, only politics of consumption. The only thing you can do is consume. You have a choice in terms of the channels you can switch, yeah? But because all channels provide you with various simulacra, it kind of doesn't matter, you know? But you are reduced to the passive consumer sponge that absorbs all these images and signs. Because everything is basically signs or information or data, what kind of politics is possible? You know, there's nothing to fight against, nothing to protest against. You are really reduced to being a consumer. No wonder that it's a very seductive model for advertising. Advertising loves this kind of simulacra. Yeah? Because the only thing you need to worry about is what is the next show you're going to watch. Okay? There is one more point here, and now we're going to have a break, and that is that this whole model of simulacra is based on this semiotic idea that behind a sign there is another sign, and behind the sign there is another sign. So, for instance, let's say the English word cup, yeah, refers to an object that is a cup. Fine. But then Baudrillard will say, yes, but this cup is not anymore, is not any longer any real object as such, but it's just another sign in the endless chains of signs. Yeah? It just, yes.
This is the significance. The sign is different.
Sorry?
The sign doesn't need necessarily refer to a meaning, to a significance. It doesn't have to have a meaning.
It doesn't have a fixed meaning.
It could be also just a writing of sign.
Yes.
Without referring to a cup. So why it has to be?
What kind of sign are you talking about?
Just the trace of the sign. If I write sign.
Well, I'm really thinking about this sentence here, Maria. You see, objects are images, images are signs, signs are information, information fits on a chip.
Yeah. Why?
How do?
Sign are information necessarily.
What else can it be?
Sign.
No.
It's just a copy of a copy of a copy.
The semiotic triangle says there is a sign and the meaning, the significant, and the signifier.
Yes, you are right.
The signifier and the signifying.
That's right. But then, are you familiar with the notion of the floating signifier? That's, I mean, you are right, and I don't want to go into semiotics too much because that's really not what we need to understand. But just to answer your concern, when Saussure came up with this model that you're talking about, then for him, really, behind the sign there was some reality. But what
This I'm not understanding. Why?
because the word horse is a sign. Yes?
Signifying.
The word horse is a signifier, and it signifies an animal on 4 legs.
Yeah, so it's not a sign, it's a signifier.
A sign and signifier is the same thing. No? What is the difference?
Derrida explained well.
Right, okay, but you see, Derrida will be located later on. Derrida is much closer to Deleuze and Guattari. So don't try to understand.
This is a sign.
Yes.
But if it doesn't any like
Well,
reference,
it is at the moment a mark.
but yeah, I mean this is the difference between the signifier and the sign.
What is the difference?
The horse, we think about the horse.
Yes.
But if we look at that one, we don't think about the word, about an object.
Not every mark. I mean, it's something to you could think about it, and you could argue that. You could say, if you want to say that every mark is a sign,
But not
that would be something Derrida says, but not Baudrillard. You see, we are at the moment only trying to figure out Baudrillard's position, and we're going to move away from it. So I'm not suggesting that this is what we are accepting as useful, but this is the straw man, this is the argument we are going to argue against. And in this Baudrillardian model, it's a process of gradual reduction of the world into information. First there was a real world. Then we replaced the real world with pictures. Then we replaced these pictures that were real paintings, mosaics, with information. Then this information is reduced to the binary. Then this binary fits on a chip and it becomes digestible and transferable. So this is the trajectory that Baudrillard describes.
And art too, right?
Of course, yeah. Art also.
Or the art
art becomes just another channel on this universal TV set. Yeah. The way I want you to just understand it is that this is the Baudrillardian model of simulacra makes us into passive consumers of a world that became information. And now we're going to have a 5-minute break. Alexandra. The campfire and television. What is the difference? The difference is of speed. Speed and distance. Yeah? What do you think is the difference? Well, okay, let's look at it. Let's look at this question philosophically. Marianne is asking. Marianne, would you like to repeat the question?
What is the difference between the campfire and watching the campfire and watching television? And I don't think there's that much of a difference.
Or maybe we can ask, what is the difference between watching a painting and watching television? Yeah?
No, because
No. Campfire.
That's not the case. The campfire is, it's like, this is what you did when you were like hunters and gatherers. You sit around the
Okay.
campfire and you watch it together with your whole tribe. And this is what you do in front of the television. You sit there with your family. And
Yeah.
watch.
Okay, so what is the difference? It's a good question. Is there a difference between sitting around the campfire and sitting around the television?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what is the difference?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Susan Hillerman argues specifically about that.
Yeah, I was thinking of that. But I don't know. Did she say anything about it?
Yeah, she did. She was saying it was about like what extraterrestrial or like phenomena that happened inside televisions, and then she wanted to like sort of draw the contrast between the campfire and the television. She talked about it briefly during.
No, but I was thinking about the function that you actually sit there and you go passive and then you watch.
I think if you're looking at that question, you look at what is the context you're asking the question. Are you asking from an anthropological point of view? Because then hunter-gatherers used fire as a source of warmth, not as a source of entertainment, as opposed to what we do socially now, use the television or internet or our phones as a form of entertainment, for keeping ourselves occupied. Back then,
I'm not talking about the phones, everybody standing around with a phone. I'm talking about the sofa, the family, the whole family.
Yeah.
But that is changing, right? That is not relevant anymore, because that has changed quite a bit over the last 10 years
I
itself.
think that it has changed, you know, but it's still with our families, we're just in a position where we don't have a family and kids and everything, but I mean, it is some, you know.
Are we on then?
Yeah, I mean,
as an artifact, yeah, but as an artifact, I think if you look at it, I don't think you can actually just look at it as watching the fire versus watching the television, because they come with different connotations, they come with different historical sort of heritages are different.
But I mean, let's then put the question differently. What is similar between sitting around the campfire and sitting around the television?
Creative moment, but the fire is concrete. I mean, the television is a simulacra, no? It's a copy.
Well, I mean, the fire, isn't fire also a form of entertainment? It has crackling noises, the tongues of fire make different shapes, and you can look at it for hours and hours, and the glowing of the...
But maybe it could be that in the campfire you are more dissolved in the moment and with the people, while watching television you are more dissolved in what is happening in other places than in your own place.
Both are technologies, you know, fire is technology, television is technology. So in a sense, it's kind of, Marianne, is any way you like it. Really. Well, because maybe fire is becoming television. You can look at it like this. Sorry?
That could be.
Could be.
Yeah, because before the television, what they used to do.
I guess the question would be, Marianne, the question I guess would be, what do you want to do with it? Or what makes you ask this question?
Let's just be very clear. Would you have any kind of critique of the society or political or religious people sitting in front of the television and passive, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, so they did that before also. They were sitting in front of the campfire and very passive.
But on that level, you will say that when you sit in front of the television, you are viewing the world through pictures, right? And the campfire, that's why I said maybe it would be interesting to think about the difference between looking at a painting and looking at television. Yeah? And in campfire, perhaps this, you know.
But it's because there's kind of like there's like the fantastic thing of watching being enriched by a campfire, and then there's like this whole thing where you're sitting watching the terrible television.
But who talks about being enriched by the campfire?
I don't know that, but it's kind of, I think maybe it has to do with low eyes and high eyes.
There's nothing worse than camping, let me tell you that.
Why? I don't know that. Why? Camping is the worst thing.
Camping for more than one night.
It's not, dude, it's not. I promise. It's not.
What is that?
You should go to one of the campsites.
We just did.
Yeah?
The tent was too small and I want to sleep with 3 people.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay. Now, But Marianne, this is a relevant question. Perhaps when we start looking at the notion of simulacra through Deleuze in a minute, something will become perhaps clearer. But if that question really interests you, there is a book by Raymond Williams, who is a great British, he's Welsh, so maybe he wouldn't like to be called British, but Welsh literary theorist and Marxist philosopher. He's great. No?
I get tired just listening to the title.
You get tired?
Just the title, you say the
Raymond Williams.
Yes.
Raymond Williams. He has a book that's called Television.
Oh.
Yes. In which he wants us to stop thinking about television. He wants us to stop thinking in a way that allows technology to determine how we live. He wants to look at it from another way. He says, let's look at television as something that has social roots. So your question about campfire will find a certain answer in this book, and it's a really good book. It's very much an eye opener on Raymond Williams' Television. Now, so far I was just presenting. We were just discussing the position about simulacra that we are leaving behind. That's the one that is often used, and how the Baudrillardian notion of simulacra. How would you describe it in one sentence?
What the notion?
Yeah, the Baudrillardian idea of simulacra. A copy of a copy of a copy. Yeah? Here. A copy of 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 a copy fits on a chip. You sit there, consume, sponge. Yeah? Yeah. It's the sponge model of simulacra. Okay. Now, this is a really good text. It also says some interesting things about photography. I will leave it for you to discover. I want to move now from Masumi to this text by Deleuze, Plato and the Simulacra. And we're going to look at it, at the question of simulacra, in a slightly different way. The reason this is important is because I think the Baudrillardian way of simulacra is really one that is kind of talks about complete helplessness in front of this world that became a picture that became information that became data, and as everything just gets reduced to some kind of binary values, we see they're kind of gaping in amazement, but unable to do anything. The problem with this approach is that everything becomes a symbol or a signifier or a sign of something else. Is Maria still here? Yeah. Yes. Everything in the Baudrillardian model, everything becomes, well, everything around us is a sign that refers to other signs and other signs, and this is kind of this endless chain of signification. Does not explain how signification itself operates. Yeah. So as Masumi says there, it seems that there is a kind of genetic code inherent in this copy of a copy of a copy, but the code itself somehow doesn't get explained. So what Deleuze is saying is that if we want to understand simulacra, it will be helpful to see where the notion of simulacra is coming from. And it's coming from, it makes its appearance for the first time in Plato. Now, first I'm going to tell you roughly where we are going with it, and then we will see how the way unfolds. For Deleuze, simulacra is not a copy of a copy of a copy. Simulacra is an entirely different image to a copy. Deleuze is saying there are two kinds of images in the world. There are images that are copies of real things, and then there are images that are just images, not copies of anything. That may be, Maria, like the mark on the wall that you said. The mark on the wall is not a copy of anything, it's just a mark on the wall. Yeah? So here, Deleuze is saying simulacra is not a copy of a copy of a copy, because a copy of a copy of a copy is still a copy. Simulacra is not a copy. It's not even trying, never trying to be a copy, not trying to relate to any real object. It's just a thing in itself. Okay, first, here is what we have on the table. Two kinds of images. Images that are copies of other images or of things, and images that don't copy anything. They just subsist in its own world. This is interesting, but on what level it will become useful? So we're going to see in a second.
What kind of images could be the second one, for instance, if they are not the copy of nothing?
The Velasquez,
but there is a copy of himself and
well,
other people. But because I was imagining.
Well, maybe like your images. Yeah, your work.
Yeah, but my work also is to. If I take picture of my work, the image.
If you take a picture of your work, then it will be a copy. But your work, let's say the eggs,
yeah.
You could say it's a copy of something, and that will be fine. You could also say it's not a copy of anything. It's just an image that is an image. It doesn't try to be a copy of anything.
Doesn't abstract fit into that category?
It could. Maria?
The medieval images we have seen, like in the beginning,
Yeah.
About representation,
Yeah.
which they are creating a kind of not a representation.
Yeah.
Are they copy of a copy? No.
No.
So they, okay.
Maybe. Good. I mean, we're just opening up here a little new way of thinking about an image. Yeah? Thinking about an image. So for instance, Mathilde, yeah? Street photography. Now, how can we apply this Deleuzean notion we just started to develop here? Yeah? On one hand, you can say a street photograph is a copy of what is happening on the street. Yeah. And that we understand that. But is it also possible to say that a street photograph is not a copy of anything, it's just an image of something, it's just its own thing, not a copy. Now, maybe it has some elements which are copy, but there is something else as well. There are some other aspects of this image which are not in relation to another reality, but its own reality. Maybe the relationships between elements in the picture are not corresponding to any relationships in the real world. They're just internal power struggles, internal tensions, inherent in the image, but not relating to anything outside of it.
But if we go through this path, wouldn't be every image would belong to the second category, maybe?
Maybe every image has purchase in both camps. Yeah? But it just allows us, suddenly you kind of feel, oh God, look, it's like taking this very heavy fur coat off your shoulders, you know, you just feel lighter, because you don't need to think about an image in this singular way as relating to something. For instance, your work thing is often very explicitly relating to something that was done previously, and that is part of it. But you could also say there are some parts of this image which are not about relating to anything. They're inherent to the way this thing is on its own. Yeah? And perhaps it's the tension between these two aspects, between the copy aspect and the simulacra aspect, it's the tension between the two that actually makes the work interesting. Yeah? Now you could go back to your own practices and see how in your practice there are elements that copy reality or copy other images, and there are elements that don't copy anything, they just exist in and for themselves. And they are called, in this case, simulacra.
How does simulacrum relate to becoming?
Very good question. Very good question. And we will, how do you think?
I don't know, I just had the question.
Anyone has any thoughts? How simulacra relates to becoming? Answer. Come on.
For example, the thing that I was saying that if you go this point of view, every image is going to fit, make into categories, is a way of thinking about becoming.
It's the same.
Good. Why?
The simulacra is to become.
Yeah.
Wow. Good.
It is.
Good. Yeah.
Would not exist if it was.
You are thinking in the right way. Yes. Because simulacra allows us to consider the image not as part of a hierarchy that links it to something that came before, but as something that has its own inherent internal standing. Yeah? Now, this standing, we can call it becoming, in terms of what this work becomes, but this becoming we could also be considered as simulacra. So on some level you could say, and that would be a good argument to put forward in a research paper, that becoming and simulacra are related. And if you do that argument, if you make this argument, then expand on it through some examples, either in your practice or in someone else's work. So, how are we going to get into this text? It's a short essay. Yes?
How can you do related? I mean, simulacra is not something that go in terms of flatness of mind.
Sorry?
What is the movement of simulacra? If it is a copy of a copy, it's just a...
Simulacra is not a copy of a copy. That's the Baudrillard's notion, and Deleuze offering us something else.
Can we see what
even if it's a copy of something.
Simulacra, well, for Baudrillard, simulacra is a copy. For Deleuze, simulacra is not a copy. It's another kind of image that refuses all connection with copy. Yeah?
But where is the relation with time?
Where is the relation with time? We're going to get into that. Give me 2 minutes. We're going to get into that. What if, really, there is more than one kind of image? Because we are all brought up on the knees of the Western philosophical tradition, whether we know about it or not, whether we like it or not, we are always taught that images are copies of real things. Deleuze comes and says there is another kind of image. It is not a copy of anything. That is its own thing. That's what we're trying to get into. So here is a point that we can start with, and that is on page 48. Do you have the text on Dropbox in front of you? Yeah, but we can also have it here.
What page?
It's 48 in Deleuze's essay. But basically, just to get you into the story. Okay, the first question, with the first sentence in this essay, what is meant by the overthrow of Platonism? Okay, so what is Platonism? For the sake of our discussion here, Platonism is the model that sees an image as a copy of the real. Image as a copy of the real, or ideas relate to the real or to things. Yeah, these images are copies. This is Platonism. In the Platonic model, you remember the cave in the Republic? Yeah, the images the prisoners see on the wall are a faint copy of the real things that are carried in front of the fire and cast the shadow. Yeah, and that's exactly how, for Plato, our existence is. What I experience around me, yeah, the experiences my senses give me about the world, are faint and inaccurate copies of reality. How do I know that? Because I look at someone far away. I know that I gave the example previously, but again, I look at someone far away, and I see that they are really, really tiny. I think, oh, this is a tiny person there. But this is my senses misleading me. Yeah? Because what my senses give me is this copy of reality. But the copy belongs to reality, but also subverts it. Now, what needs to happen? I need to process this notion of the senses in my mind through the power of my reasoning, and my reasoning will go like this. Okay, I see a tiny, tiny person, but they are far away. Because there are laws of perspective, because I know how optics operate, I know that I realize that actually the reason I see them tiny is because that's how my eye works, and that's how light moves, and really the person is the same size as me. Yeah? Now I only see that in my mind's eye, so to speak. Because even after I did this processing, lo and behold, the person in the distance is still tiny. Yeah? My senses still keep feeding me this false information that only gets corrected when I apply my logical reasoning. So therefore, you need logical reasoning to get to truth. Correct? You agree with that? Maria? Yes? Okay. So you need logical reason. Without logic, there is no true knowledge. That's fine. But what if? Well, that's Platonism. Why then we need to overthrow Platonism? What's wrong with this model? Well, one thing that might be wrong with this model is that it seems that if logic is the key to true knowledge, then logic becomes the most important quality of human existence. So if for some reason you are not that strong on logic, maybe because you are just not very logical, maybe because you happen to be a woman, yeah, or maybe because you just happen to be not white, yeah, or just not Platonic enough for whatever reason, you somehow, not at the top of this pyramid. Yes, so this emphasis on logic and on the reasoning and on scientific analysis as the only way through which reality can be correctly understood privileges a very specific human being, So the closer you are to Plato and his Greek model of consciousness, the closer you are to truth, and the more far away you are. Let's say if you happen to be a barbarian, yeah, someone who doesn't speak Greek, someone who doesn't partake in rational experience of reality, then you just somehow on a lower level. Yeah? So we have the whole hierarchical model of existence that also can very easily become racist and exclusive, is based on this privileging of rationality as the way through which reality can be experienced correctly. So what does it mean to overthrow Platonism in that case? To overthrow Platonism means to stop privileging reason as the way to, as the access card to reality. Yeah? Maybe intuition is also just as valid. Maybe you can access reality very well through feelings. Maybe you can access it through hallucinations. Maybe you can access it through desire. I don't know. Lots of other things are available once reason is not the absolute and only key to unlock these gates of the real.
It also allows you to become a copy by yourself. Right?
When?
Kind of. Like this is what Deleuze offers you.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you the opportunity to become a copy and or to be a copy and not.
Well, Deleuze offers you a way not to be a copy and to completely leave the notion of the copy and the original to one side. Is that what you're saying?
No, not really.
Okay, we will get into Deleuze in 1 second. But just so you see, why we need to overthrow Platonism? Because we want to create a space in which various approaches to the real get validity. Yeah? It's okay to access the real through feelings, through intuition, through hallucinations, through desire, through through art. Yeah? But if reason is the privileged way for reality, as Plato is saying, then what claim can you make as an artist? Clearly you are somewhere at a much lower point in the food chain than a scientist. Yeah? You remember the example I gave you? The architect and the builder? You remember? Both build houses. Yeah? So why? The architect and the builder both build houses. Why one is invited to dinner parties and the other isn't? Because the architect uses his or her intellect and the builder uses the hands. Both build houses though. Yeah? But somehow the person who builds the house with the intellect in our culture seems to be elevated much higher than someone who builds with the hands. But it's interesting. Why? Why not say that both are really, doing more or less the same thing? Why shouldn't they have kind of equal playing field?
Well, actually, the architecture doesn't.
About artists and crafts.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's interesting that in our culture, that's how things are valued.
That's really just supply and demand.
But
supply and demand.
Yeah.
I agree, but not just supply and demand. When you say there's a what do you mean supply and demand? It's easier to become a builder? You think? I think you should try that then. I think being a builder is quite hard.
Well, it is hard, but perhaps not as hard as becoming an architect.
I don't know, but why?
But the architecture really doesn't build any houses. They build ideas. They build drawings.
So okay, but why? Generally, I'm not talking about us here, but very generally, if you come home and say, "Mama and Daddy, guess what? I'm going to marry an architect," they would be very happy. If your family is anything like my Jewish family, they would be very happy. But if you come home and say, "Mommy and Daddy, guess what? I'm going to marry a builder," they might not be so happy. Yeah?
Because the architect works with the...
So what? But why? Why the one who works with the head is for us so much more valuable or more valued than someone who works with the hands?
Because we give more value to the intellect.
Precisely. What I'm trying to show you is that the reason we prefer the architect to the builder is because we are raised on the principles of Platonism. that privilege the intellect over the hands or the senses. Yeah? So make no mistake, I'm not suggesting that I'm not using the example of architect and the builder to prove a point, but just to illustrate a prejudice that we have. And this prejudice, this is called, for Deleuze, Platonism. Now you see how Platonism is also bad news for us as artists. Yeah? Because as artists, we don't work intellectually, we work sensually. You know, when you decide to bring in something into your work and put it there on the floor, a piece of carpet, or some bricks, or to paint the wall, you don't do it because you analyzed it. You do it because that's how it feels for you. Yeah? It just feels right to do it like this. Correct? It feels right to use yellow here and red there. It feels right, and that's it. Yeah? No. It feels right, but we know that feelings are misleading. You know, senses are misleading. The person in the distance appears a little tiny. You cannot rely on what it feels like. You have to intellectually prove that this is the correct way of doing things. That's what Plato would say. Yeah, but you cannot make art like that. Lo and behold, art somehow done with senses and feelings and God knows what. Just some kind of, as we will learn next week, fear and trembling.
So are you basically giving us weapons to overthrow Platonism?
Yes, that's what we are doing. And the weapon to overthrow Platonism is called simulacra. But it's also called becoming, rhythm, and rising. Yeah? So while it is not the same thing, they are part of the same Swiss Army knife. Vishal.
Just to go back about how we perceive the other, right? Like when you're talking about, logically in your head that the other person is about the same size, physical attributes.
Yeah.
And how we're raised, how society functions, tells us that this is more important than what is actually happening.
Correct. Yeah, and that's Plato.
But at what point, when you talk about simulacra, we need to talk about self. Right? At some point, you have to talk about the notion of the self, because the self is formed by your environment, formed by everyday experiences, formed by these visual perceptions that are tricking you because society is that way. Also because you think intelligence is more important than what is actually happening in front of you. It's just visually, it could be other senses as well.
Yeah.
The only question I wanted to ask is, when we talk about self, we talk about simulacrum, are we at any point going to talk about, from the East, are we going to talk about Buddha?
We're not
only in connection to the self.
No, we're not going to talk about Buddha, not because it is not important, because I'm not qualified to talk to you about Buddha. That's not my training. But I have nothing against Buddha. I think there's strong parallels between specifically Zen Buddhism and postmodern thinking, just as there are strong parallels between, for instance, Platonism and Hinduism. Yeah? So this is very interesting and could be explored. Schopenhauer, for instance, was very interested in the Vedas. Japanese Zen influenced Heidegger. So these are very interesting things to explore. We're not going to do it in class because it's not it's not what I can bring. Yeah, but I have nothing against it. And if you want to explore that in your work, I would encourage you to do that.
One other thing when we talk about simulacrum, Confucius.
Yes.
Because he constantly, before Western philosophers were dealing with these ideas of simulation or simulacrum, all of this, he was already talking about faking it till you're making it.
Yes,
basically
correct.
Saying you have to fake it, you have to pretend like things are fine.
Yeah.
You have to pretend that the world doesn't exist, so you can exist.
Yeah. And that also what you get in Tantric Yoga. Good, correct. I mean, all this stuff is very interesting. So the reason we don't study it is not because I don't think it is important and profound. I offer you a certain pathways through certain text, but in a sense the texts are not that important. It just what is important is to really understand how things are set up and how can we maybe make a clearing and make an opening through this very overwhelming notion that intellect and reason are above everything else. Now, you can do that through going to Eastern thinking. You can do it through going to postmodern thinking. Through where you go, it doesn't really matter. It's really the direction of travel that matters. Yeah. Now, so Simona was absolutely right there. Simulacra is a way to overthrow Platonism. Platonism is putting reason and logic at the tip of the pyramid. Yeah? Now, the whole, the white man's burden, as Kipling is saying, the whole notion of Western imperialism and colonialism, why we should go to Africa to bring light to these dark places, it's because we are the reasonable ones. We are the logical ones. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of stuff riding on this quite innocent idea at first glance that, you need reason to unlock reality. So, the overthrowing of Platonism, therefore, has a political investment, has also an artistic investment, because, in Platonism, in Plato, in the Republic, artists like you and me were not even allowed into the ideal city.
So, just there's a very important sentence that comes out from Rimbaud, and it says, "I am an other." So, is that a simulacrum? Is that asserting that?
Rimbaud.
Yes.
I am an other. And I am. Yeah. Another. Yeah.
So is that saying?
It's I am an other. I think it's not exact. Well, there are connections there, but I am an other, or that I can only know who I am through the other person. It is another way of overthrowing Platonism, because when you say I am the other, you bring in the notion of the dialogue. So I become myself by talking to you.
And identity.
Yeah, it's only in your eyes I know who I really am. Yeah, or through I don't have any self formulating identity, but what I am is formed through connections and dialogues. This is another non-dialectical way of thinking. It is connected. I wouldn't say that this is simulacra, but I would say that it is another model of overthrowing Platonism. The Russian philosopher Bakhtin, Mikhail Bakhtin, talks in a very similar way to Rimbaud about dialogue as an alternative to dialectics. Let's not get too far, because yes, you will see, there's quite a lot we can unpick here. But you understand what Deleuze's political program, why we need to overthrow Platonism. Why we need to overthrow Platonism? Anyone here?
Excuse me?
Why do we need to overthrow Platonism? What's wrong with Platonism?
It's exactly the concept of Baudrillard. It's like, it's a copy, when you're saying that it's a copy of the reality that you're seeing in
Good.
the cave.
In one word, hierarchy. Platonism is hierarchical. Who is at the top of the Platonic pyramid? Mind, yeah. Look. Everything else is covered in cloth. Everything else is covered. Only the head is exposed. Why? That's Platonism for you. Yeah? This is Platonism. The Rodin's thinker, that's Platonism. Yeah? So the overthrowing of Platonism is a political agenda. If anyone is here is interested in questions of race, in questions of feminism or gender, you will have issues with the way Platonism shows us the world. So we need to overthrow it. But what is at stake? And here I'm going to skip to page 48. Could someone read to us what is highlighted here? Anyone? Rupert? Thank you.
The great manifest duality, the idea and image, is there only for this purpose. To guarantee the latent distinction between the two types of images, give a concrete criterion. 4. If the copies or icons are good images, well-founded ones, it is because they are endowed with resemblance. But resemblance must not be understood as an external correspondence. It proceeds less from one thing to another than from a thing to an idea, since it is the idea that comprises the relations and proportions that constitute internal essence. Interior and spiritual resemblance is the measure of a claim.
Okay, so this is an explanation of the Platonic model. It's not the explanation of Simulacra. That's how Platonism operates. In Platonism, there is a great duality: image and idea, or model and copy. Same thing. Yeah. Model and copy. Image. Can I have an image? Anyone has an image? Anyone has a picture here? Is it an image? Okay. That's very complicated. Right. No. I will probably break it. That's great. Yes. Okay. So here is an image, and the image relates to an idea. Yeah. So the person at the distance appears small, and that is the image. The idea is arrived at after the rational correction is applied. But in terms of, let's say, the photographic image, here is the image, the photograph, and it is of a well, it's very difficult because we don't have any images, yeah. But here is a photograph, and the photograph is of. Do you have something? Okay, right. Okay, so here is an image. Here is an image, and it is a copy of a real space, corridor, a room, whatever. Yeah. So there is this real environment, and there is the copy. Yeah. So that's how you need to understand the idea and the image. Now, how do we guarantee the authenticity of the image? The key word here. How do we know that the image is a good image? Good image. How do we know that? It's a good image because it is
high resolution now.
no. It is what it is.
Good representation of order.
Look at that. What is this? Endowed with resemblance. So how do you know that it's a good image? Because it resembles the original. What is a resemblance? When something looks like something else, yeah? You resemble your mother. Have you been told? I hate it when people tell me. Oh, you look just like your dad. That's after trying for 40 years not to, yeah? But it is actually, it's the trying that makes you so much like him. So
yeah, that's true.
Yes, but by the time you figure it out, it's too late. You're already completely like your dad. Okay, so how do you guarantee that the image is a good image? Yeah. Why is it a good image? Because it is endowed with resemblance. Yeah. So how do you know that you are a good photographer? Because your pictures resemble reality. Not only if you are a good photographer, then your picture resembles reality technically, If you are a great photographer, then you all capture not only the physical reality, but also the spiritual reality. Then your portraits also capture something of the soul of the person you photograph. You know, something of their inner beauty. So, you know, that's what makes you really, truly great. You know, that you know how to develop this resemblance between your image and the original on many, many levels. Yeah?
How about the landscape photographers?
Same thing.
Huh?
Same thing. So, but according to the Platonic model, a good copy will have resemblance, and the more resemblance there is, the more levels of resemblance there are in your work that capture the physical quality, the spiritual qualities, the economic qualities, and whatever, the more true and good the image is. A good image is an image that is rich with resemblance.
So in that way, if I'm a tourist, I go there and take a picture.
Yeah.
I'm a better photographer than those landscape photographers who like use filters and expose for like
Well,
30
the question,
minutes.
the point is that you understand what the criterion. The Platonic criterion of an image is the extent to which it resembles. Now, you might say that you need tobacco filter to resemble better, or you might say you don't need anything to resemble better. That's a different question. People might have different approaches, and then you will judge different versions based on which one, to your mind, is a better resemblance. Yeah? So, but what you need to understand is, this is the Platonic principle. It's the principle of resemblance. So, the passport photo in your passport is based on the principle of resemblance. It's based on the Platonic principle. Okay, we discussed it in the past. We spoke about the way representation operates. Yeah? Okay, now, resemblance must not be understood as an external correspondence. It proceeds less from one thing to another than from a thing to an idea, since it is the idea that comprises the relations and proportions that constitute internal essence. And what is this idea he is talking about? This idea is representation. Yeah? Okay, good. So, in the Platonic model, a good image is one that resembles, a bad image is the one that doesn't resemble, or resemble poorly. Yeah? So the image strives to be a resemblance of the real. Now, and here, at this point, you also see where Brian Massumi took the idea for his essay. Here we move to discuss the simulacra, and here Deleuze is saying, and Rupert, could you read these two highlighted sentences?
The copy from the copy?
If we say
of the simulacrum that it is a copy of a copy, an endlessly degraded icon, an infinitely slackened resemblance, we miss the essential point. The difference in nature between simulacrum and a copy, the aspect through which they form the two parts of a division. The copy is an image endowed with resemblance. The simulacrum is an image without resemblance.
And here you have it. In the yellow highlight, this is the whole point. So, the traditional photographic image operates on the premise of resemblance. Correct? Okay. Simulacrum is an image without resemblance. Simulacrum is not a copy of a copy of a copy, as Jean Baudrillard would like us to believe. Simulacrum is an image without resemblance. So, we have now two species of images. Now, it's interesting because there's not only one kind of image, there are two kinds of images. So there are images and kind of image cyborgs. Yeah, image avatars. You know, among all the images that faithfully represent or faithfully resemble something, There is another family of images that doesn't want to represent anything, doesn't want to resemble anything. It is just a simulacra. Okay, now you can see how this approach can be so productive for art practice that is not based on copying reality. You know, well, modern art, you could say, on the whole, is sort of dealing with simulacra, or at least dealing with the constant movement between copy and simulacra. Now, this I quite like that. If simulacrum,
Ask a question.
yes,
Is the representation of God the simulacrum?
say it again, I didn't hear.
Are the representation of God simulacrum?
Representational God.
God, of any God.
Representation of gods is simulacrum.
In the history.
Well, I guess that again depends where you are coming from. I think I think it's difficult to talk about representation of God if you want to be really strict about it, because if your notion of God is as something that doesn't have any form, then probably representation is not the right word to describe it.
I mean, for example, I don't know, Capella Sistina.
Yes.
Would be, I mean, there is nothing real.
But look, the thing is, you have now, thanks to Deleuze, you have two ways of looking at it. You could look at the Sixtine Chapel and say, representationally, as a Platonic image, the Sistine Chapel represents human beings, struggles, the creation of the world, and all these things. But as a simulacra, it doesn't represent anything. It's just a thing. And both are possible.
I mean, for example, there is that famous painting.
Yeah.
But no one has seen
No.
a God in the world, no? I mean.
Yeah.
So, could it be a simulacrum?
Yes.
It doesn't have any
It allows you can look at it both as a representation and as a simulacrum. Because I would say that if you are a Christian who believes in creation, you might say this is a representation of creation. Yeah? But you can also say this is not a representation of anything. It is just what it is.
For the longest time, I mean, obviously, the representation of God was pretty much the main reason for art anyway. So I mean, like, it's all just the same. I don't think that the representation of God.
Why do you say that?
Well, I'm just saying, like, for a long time, like, painters and stuff, like, they strived to make representations of God and religion, even though it's like...
No, but her question was to be with the representation of God as a simulacrum. Is it a simulacrum?
I think the same exact question could be applied to any image nowadays. Like, if you say, is the image that was on the book a simulacrum, is the exact same question, is God, the representation of God simulacrum? I think they're the same thing.
Because in this way, it's just changing God for something. For
Exactly.
Let's stop there for a second. Let's stop because we will run out of time before we get to the point. Even though the discussion is very interesting, but I think I want to put a few more kind of details to this notion of simulacra. Could someone read to us this new highlighted paragraph? Anyone? I'll just maybe someone else. You want to read? Okay.
Yeah. The simulacrum implies great dimensions, depth, and distance, which the observer cannot dominate.
That's very important. I will interrupt you for a second. Great dimensions, depth, and distances, so that the observer cannot dominate. So it suggests something gigantic. Yeah, we will see in a minute how it works. Yes.
It is because he cannot master them that he has an impression of resemblance. The simulacrum includes within itself the differential point of view, and the spectator is made part of the simulacrum, which image is transformed and deformed according to his point of view.
Great. So stop here, because that might look a little bit unclear, and I want to show you where in Plato this notion actually is being developed. Now with all these things, bad Platonism, I don't need to tell you, Plato is actually fantastic. And, great fun to read as well. This is taken from the essay, The Sophist, which is a very interesting essay, very important to our discussions. And I have highlighted here a little section. It's a dialogue between two people, the visitor, who is the sophist philosopher, and Theaetetus. I would like to read it in two voices. So who will be visitor? Ben, you will be the visitor?
Yeah.
Okay. And Ben, will you be the Theaetetus? Okay. Let's start here from the first highlighted one, from the visitor. One type of imitation. Yeah, they discuss these two types of images. You will see exactly where in the canon of Western thought the notion of simulacrum for the first time makes an appearance. I think it's really quite interesting. So please.
One type of imitation I see is the art of likeliness making. That's the one we have whether someone produces an imitation by keeping to the proportions of length, breadth, and depth of his model, and also by keeping to the appropriate colors of its parts.
Stop here. How would you call what was described now?
Copy.
Copy, yeah.
With resemblance.
Well, yeah. So, for instance, when you draw a portrait of someone as a resemblance, that will be this type of imitation, likeness making. Yeah. So the traditional notion of photography is likeness making. Yeah. Okay. Now.
But don't all imitators try to do that?
Good question. Yeah. So isn't that basically the end of story of images? All images try to be accurate copies. Okay.
Not the ones who sculpt or draw very large works. If they reproduced the true proportions of their beautiful subjects, you see the upper parts would appear smaller than they should, and the lower parts would appear larger, because we would see the upper parts from further away and the lower parts from closer.
Okay, stop here. What is he on about?
He's saying that, like, if we actually did true representation, that things would be skewed in the image that we produce.
Exactly. So, for instance, you know this famous sculpture which disappeared, the Colossus of Rhodos.
What was this painting? It's like super famous, and
the ambassadors.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Good. Yeah. Do you know the ambassadors?
I think David is also out of proportion.
It has this the skull.
Okay, yeah. So as you see here, this is, if you look at this image here from a very sharp angle, and there is actually the frame, even a point from which you're supposed to look, then you see that as a skull. Yeah, that's what you had in mind. Yeah. For instance, I don't know,
I think it was just, I was told that something about while discussing this painting, if you were drinking out of like a crystal wine glass, it would distort the image and make it perfectly straight.
Really?
But yeah, same idea.
But for instance, this image that obviously we only have it as an artist's imagination, because the statue itself is lost. But there was this Colossus in the island of Rhodos, this enormous sculpture. Now, what the visitor is saying in the paragraph that Ben just read is that for the face of this sculpture to appear lifelike for us when we look at it from the ground, maybe 50 meters away and looking up, the shape of the face has to be completely distorted so it will look okay for us. Yeah? But if we were at the eye level with the face, it would be a monstrosity. It would be unrecognizable. It's only recognizable from this point here. Does it make sense? Another example is that, do you know the Parthenon in Athens, which is a temple surrounded by columns? It's well known that the columns are not equidistant, but the distances between the columns are different, so they will look harmonious. Yeah, but in order for something like that to look harmonious, actually, the actual dimensions have to be distorted. Now, what is interesting here is that at this point in this dialogue of the sophists, the notion of simulacra enters the discourse, or the Western discourse, to be immediately left behind and forgotten. Yeah? As if nothing happened. Because from this point, simulacra acquires the notion of something monstrous, something corrupt and distorted. Yeah? But it's very interesting that this notion of simulacra in Plato is connected to these very large works. Because you need to ask yourself, what about how these very large works come about? There has to be obviously a certain level of technical proficiency to be able to build sculptures like this. Yeah? So in a sense, it's only when somehow the notion of simulacra, do you see, already in Plato is connected to technology. You have to have sufficiently advanced technology to make very large sculptures or shapes. So these questions of distortion start to bear on the image. So, okay, now, Taitetus?
Of course.
Okay.
So don't those craftsmen say goodbye to the truth, or to truth, and produce in their images the proportions that seem to be beautiful instead of the real ones?
Good. So you see? So you say now goodbye to truth. As a photographer that does what we said here, likeness making, you are a friend of the truth. You recreate, you make truth in your images because your images operate on the principle of resemblance or representation. But as the craftsman or the artist who works on these big massive shapes, you say goodbye to truth because you privilege beauty or appearance over representing truthfully.
I was just going to say, like, in regards to your example of these large statues, photography uses, like, tilt-shift photography for the same exact purpose.
Absolutely right.
They use lenses to distort tall buildings and architecture to make them look normal.
And that's what's so fascinating. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But it's the same perspectival correction that we kind of apply in our mind, according to Plato, to get a true image of reality. Okay, now, so let's carry on. Visitor?
Oh, no, I think it's...
No. Taitetus?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So can't the first sort of image be called a likeness since it's like the thing? Yes. And as we said before, the part of imitation that deals with the should be called likeness making. Yes. Now what we are going to call something that now what are we what are we going to the green is difficult.
Go. Sorry? The green is difficult. Yeah, I can take it off. Can I take it off? Yeah.
Now what are we going to call something that appears to
No,
be...
no. Now, you are teaching, you are explaining to the Theaetetus, who is a disciple. So, now, Theaetetus. Okay,
Now.
yeah.
Now, what are we going to call something that appears to be like a beautiful thing, but only because it's seen from a viewpoint that's not beautiful and would seem unlike the thing that claims to be like if you would, like if you came to be able to see such large things adequately? If it appears the way that the thing does, if it appears the way the thing does, but in fact isn't like it, isn't it an appearance?
Of course.
And this part of imitation covers a great deal of painting and the rest of imitation. Of course. Wouldn't appearance making be the right thing to call expertise in producing appearances that aren't likenesses?
Yes, definitely.
Well, those are two types of copy making. I meant likeness making and appearance making.
Good. Two types of copy then, or two types of image making. The translation here is not the best, but it's the two types of image making. One is likeness making, one is appearance making. What is likeness making? Resemblance, representation, traditional photography. What is appearance making?
Perception.
Appearance making?
How they look like?
Appearance making. What are we doing about today? Simulacra. Yes. And do you know what is the Greek? Simulacra is a Latin word. Do you know what is the Greek word for simulacra? It will really help, I think. Is phantasm. And the word that is used here in the Greek original for the appearance making is phantasm. And it's interesting because what is phantasm? It's fantasy. A fantasy is an image, but
So it's a ghost.
it's a ghost. Good. Ghost is also good. But think about it. A fantasy is also an image, but a fantasy is an image that doesn't represent a real thing. Fata Morgana. Yeah? You walk in the desert, you are thirsty, and suddenly you see an oasis. But it's a mirage. There's no oasis. It's a simulacra. Yeah? So, but do you see that the notion of simulacra makes appearance in Plato as a way to say, well, guess what? Some artists abandon their commitment to truth and instead prefer to focus on what looks pretty or beautiful. Yeah? And this is a damnation of this practice. But we are interested in this moment that this practice of making things as a mirage or as a simulacra is already in Plato relates to the technology that allows really gigantic things to happen. But I kind of always think that this making these big, massive sculptures that somehow greater than we can comprehend because they exceed the dimensions of our own body, they always remind me of the internet. You know, the internet is something gigantic like this, you know, immeasurable. Because it is immeasurable, the notions of resemblance become meaningless. You know, because when something is immeasurable, it cannot resemble something that is measurable. So you have a different, or once you get into this order of magnitude, then by necessity, images lose their representational quality. They stop being a resemblance and instead they become simulacra. So simulacra is the byproduct of technology that allows us to make things greater, bigger, faster.
And where does the idea go? Like where does it go to? The idea, the logic?
Out of the window.
I don't know.
Out of the window. And that is the danger of simulacra, because idea and logic is truth, by other words. Yeah? Now, and that's why And what actually, the visitor, who is the sophist, what lesson he wants to impart on Theaetetus? He wants to tell him, look, my young friend, look, young Theaetetus, the world is full of forgeries that pretend to be truthful, logical images from which they pretend to be images from which you can learn something about the real world, but in fact they are false allies because there is nothing behind them. They don't correspond to anything. You know, here is a picture of a unicorn, and it appears as a real picture. So you might say, well, that's what a real unicorn looks like. Lo and behold, it's not a representation of a unicorn, it's a simulacra. There is nothing behind this image. Yeah? So yeah, truth and logic go out of the window. And that's why artists, on the whole, are not permitted into the Platonic ideal city. Because we are peddlers of lies and illusions. We are very dangerous. Why we are dangerous? Not only because our images don't correspond to something real, but because we put into question the whole idea that an image corresponds to something real. Once you permit the notion of simulacra, once you accept that some images do something else besides giving us true and real statements about the world, the whole notion that an image is a true statement about the world becomes problematized. No image can be trusted now. Every image now can be seen as a forgery. That's what you've done. Look what you've done. You made this big statue of Rhodos and you thought, you know, that's a great big ass Colossus over there. But you undermined the whole golden Platonic relationship between images and ideas. Suddenly, the relation is severed. The golden bond is broken. We are now in a world in which we cannot trust an image to get us to something real. That's what we've done. For that reason, precisely at the point when simulacra makes its appearance in the Platonic dialogue, it is immediately stamped with this branded as the evil simulacra and driven out of the discourse. And isn't it interesting that you would think that according to the text we just read in Plato, there are two kinds of images, and you would expect that we would have sort of two ways of images to play with, simulacra and realistic or representational or likeness image. But no, simulacra is completely non-existent in the discourse. All we have is an image as a true statement about something, whether it is the creation of the world or the landing on the moon. So here you have it. We kind of need to do a little bit more on that, but maybe in the beginning of the next session. Next session is not in this room. You know that. Yeah? And
do we have that on the timetable?
Sorry?
Do we have that on the timetable?
It is on Moodle now.
Could you, for a second, go back to the text? There was one sentence that you...
Right. In the Deleuze.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You skipped over. So go up. That one. What is the interiorized civilization?
If the simulacrum still has a model, it is another one. A model of the other from which follows an interiorized dissimilarity. Okay, so, yeah, how can we understand that? So, a normal image has a model that it refers to. A traditional representational image is always a copy of a model. Yeah? simulacrum is an image that doesn't have a model. But Deleuze says, to the extent that simulacra has a model, it is another one. It's a model of the other. Yeah? So it's the model of the other. It's a model that internalizes dissimilarity. So to the extent that simulacra is the model of anything, it is a model of non-resemblance. Yeah? It's a model of non-representation. Or another way to say it is that, let's talk about, well, forgive me for using this term traditional photography, because it is really quite, coarse. But in the kind of traditional photographic model, I can have a picture which is a representation of Lucrezia, and I can have a picture which is a representation of Timo. But you might say a simulacra will not be a representation of either Lucrezia or Timo, but of the difference between them. Simulacra captures what simulacra resembles, to the extent that it resembles anything, is the difference between models. Okay?
So the process.
Good. Very good, yeah. So simulacra, if traditional photographic image resembles an object, simulacra resembles becoming, or a process. And I think here we really came where we need, and the snake finally swallowed its tail. So thank you very much. You were great today. Great.